everyone. Welcome to the first ever episode of Shift Notes. My name's Lori, and I'm joined by two really good friends here, Mikey and Jesus, or Gian, as you might know him. And we have kind of been working on this project for a couple of months, and so I'm really stoked to bring to you the first ever episode of Shift Notes. So what is it and what's going on? Well, we figured that this was the episode all about introducing what we've come up with. So for the past couple of months, we've had a couple of chats with each other, and we decided that, one of the things that we really wanted to do is to bring a kind of like interview platform to the hospitality industry. So every Tuesday, we're going to drop an interview with someone that we really look up to, someone who works as either a bartender or a brand ambassador, or maybe they work in, as a brewer or winemaker, or just someone who's really, like, maybe a consultant, someone who's really, nailed it in hospitality, someone we look up to, and we just really want to share their experiences and kind of give them a place where they can kind of talk, and I guess the rest of the hospitality industry can access them and hear what some of the great people in our industry are doing.
Yeah, so basically we came up with the idea after literally just shoot and chat between all three of us. I think we connected again through COVID and everything, and I suppose the big thing was just trying to push forward the community. The idea was to get that education level over, get as much connection through the community as possible, and just genuinely push forward.
Yeah, the reason why we feel that the industry needs something like this is just more that we grew up at a time where we're quite fortunate to learn from a lot of the people that have now gone on to do big, amazing things. And we feel that it's our chance to be able to give back, but also just there just seems to be a slight lack of career mentorship in hospitality, and not just in around the world, but it is in New Zealand in particular, as a lot of us have experienced. And now with what has happened this year with COVID-19, there seems that there could be sort of like a lack of purpose, and what we want to bring is more of sort of like invigorate the reasons why you got into the industry and why you want to stay.
Yeah, totally. I think what we're really hoping to achieve out of this segment, so it's kind of like an ongoing interview process, and we're really hoping to, inspire the industry by hearing from some of the people who, ended up in really cool jobs, because like Gian said, a lot of times in hospitality, it's not really always seen as a career, and people aren't always shown or exposed to some of the amazing career paths you can take. So we really want to expose the industry to what's out there, who's out there, how they got there, what they did, and also make those mentors more accessible. So hopefully by the end of each interview, you'll hear a little bit more about some of the great people that we really look up to. And then from there, if you feel inspired by someone in particular, you'll have a way to be able to reach out, say hey, and start networking and meeting the great people. Yeah, that's pretty much what the goal is. So
yeah, I suppose that integration side, right? That's the huge part. It's not only making connections, but hopefully we're going to be able to provide some form of means to actually give you guys some idea of how you can maybe go about that as well.
Yeah.
Cool. So because it's episode 1, and we kind of figured that this was a good introduction episode, we figured that what we should probably do here today is actually just take some time out to introduce ourselves. So some of you may already know one or two of us, maybe all of us, but some of you may have no idea who we are. So we figured that we'll take some time out, say hello, say where we come from, give you a little bit of a background on who we are, and then also maybe chat about some of the topics that we think are really relevant to the industry currently, and share some of our views. So maybe maybe we can start with Gian. Gian, do you want to chat about who you are, where you come from, and actually where you're tuning in from right now?
Yeah, so I'm currently in Australia. I've been here now since March, staying with family. But my career starts now 15 years ago. I was 14. I was working for a catering company, just washing plates on the weekends whilst I was at school. And just through the time that I started with them, up until about 6 years later, I was their kitchen hand, porter, and then gradually went into front of house, working events and working sort of like different styles of events, and ended up becoming their beverage manager. Now this company is still operating and still quite successful. It's a company called Mint Kitchen, and the family and the team I still hold dearly to my heart. Ever since I started working with them, they've really taught me a lot about how to compose myself and how to look forward and how to prepare myself for the hospitality industry. So throughout that time that I worked with them, I also worked in various different restaurants and bars and cafes. It wasn't until about 2012 where I moved down to Wellington to work at the Hawthorn Lounge. And I spent on and off about 5 years there. It was one of those moments where you just kind of find a place where you just feel really settled and really comfortable, but also really challenged and get to learn a lot. And that was purely based around not only the people that I got to work with, but also the customers that were coming in. So after about 3 and a bit years, I moved away to Canada. I spent just about 20 months there. I was very lucky to not only get myself a really, really nice job. I was also really thankful to meet some amazing people. Again, some people that I still hold with a lot of respect and really hold close to my heart. And yeah, I was very lucky to be put myself into situations where cocktail competitions were a common thing, and I was able to not only represent myself in the bar and what we did on a regular basis, but also got to represent Canada at a global level, which was really fun. It was very daunting. It was very scary for a young Kiwi guy, to go and take on the big bad world. After that, I moved back to New Zealand, went back to my home, Hawthorn Lounge, worked with Justin and the team, and moved to the UK. And whilst I was working in the UK, I was working at a bar called Happiness Forgets in London. Again, it was one of those experiences that really changed my life and molded me into the person that I am now. It gave me the management skills, the sort of skills that I learned on the job, but also stuff that I had learned throughout the years from various different types of groups and people, and put them all together. And I think that's one of the bonuses of being able to have worked in so many different scenarios, is that I was able to gain a lot of knowledge, and also every single day kind of keep evolving that knowledge. And I think that's like the big thing about hospitality, right? And that's yeah. And then now I've spent 2 years in Canada, in London, and I was very fortunate to have met some amazing people who are based in New York City. And midway through last year, I was given the opportunity to apply for a O1 visa, which in itself is quite a remarkable thing, really, for someone that works in hospitality to be able to apply for. It wasn't easy by any means. I currently still work with a lawyer who I've never met, but over 6 months she was able to get me a visa, which normally was only handed out to people who excel in their fields, artists, scientists, people who really are highly regarded in their fields. And it was just an amazing moment to know that hospitality in the government's scenario is actually considered something that's very influential for the economy and the community. So that was a real big bonus. And after my time in the UK, I moved to New York. Unfortunately, with what's happened with the pandemic, I was only in New York for 3 weeks. It was an amazing 3 weeks. I was very lucky to be able to work behind a bar for a little bit at a place called Crown Shine. But yeah, I had to come back and be with family. It was a nice time to kind of, given all the circumstances, it was a nice chance to come back and stay at home with my parents for a little bit and rejuvenate and yeah, be in touch with people like Laurie and Mikey to bring you this sort of little one-on-one session, I guess. Yeah.
All right, that's awesome. I feel like I was kind of lucky enough to see Gian in New York City like a week before the world shut down. So
that was crazy. The timing was just, it was nuts.
It was super crazy. And then like 1 week later, the whole world shuts down, and we were like, literally, what happened? And then yeah, now here we are chatting, like doing 300 Zoom calls a day, or a week, pretty much between all of us. Yeah. But yeah, anyways, Mikey, you've got a pretty awesome story. So to sound kind of maybe cheesy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I mean, wow, Jesus is so inspiring. Anyway, we've worked together quite a few little snippets of that time as well, which has been really awesome. So I originally started pretty similar time, 14 to 15 years ago. Basically, my first kind of bar job was very much not a job that I really wanted to have. It was me studying in Christchurch, and I was doing it in the weekend, a place called Grumpy Mole. From there, I kind of moved back up to Auckland. I wasn't enjoying Christchurch. The bar wasn't necessarily where I wanted to be either. It was a part-time job. Moved back up to Auckland to start my degree. This is what I wanted to do. I thought this creative background was going to be kind of me. Again, as a job, I jumped into some hospitality. I was working more so kind of nightclub places. So the first place I worked at was Reservoir, somewhere where we actually met the likes of Chase and also a very good friend of mine, Julian Green, which we all know quite well, or have worked with him, I think, as well. Where we actually worked together for quite a long period at that point. Nightclubs, the likes of Sale Street after that, moving into the city. And I kind of, probably that was the first point where I saw the potential of an actual professional job in the industry. I went across to town from the North Shore, so I went across to the city, and it was a point where I jumped in on a really, really busy, crazy section, saw some of the people who I'd heard about through the industry, some of the people who are, known as mentors to different people. And that was kind of where I got a little bit of the fever. I was studying at the same time full time. But I started to kind of lose the passion for where the study was, and they kind of switched each other out at the same time. I think the kind of defining point here for me when I decided that hospitality as a whole, or the bartending thing, was very much what I wanted to do as a profession, even if it was only for a short period of time, was moving up to the corner store. Again, I worked with Chase up there, and then over the space of a couple of different times, I actually lived in Canada in between, for a couple of snowboard seasons, which was pretty awesome. Where I did zero hospitality work, funnily enough. I couldn't get a job over there. But after I came back, and actually me and Gian here worked together for a very memorable 8 to 9 months, which is just before he moved down to Wellington, and funnily enough, I moved to Queenstown at the same time. I moved into another little bar, which was even smaller, and I guess probably 42 Below, World Cup and stuff. Everybody talks about it all the time, but it's where I actually saw quite a cool international connection with Queenstown, which had always been there. It was actually the last one now. So there's a lot of people who I met down the line in my career, even in London when I lived there, who I was like, well, we met at 42 Below. We had a couple of drinks together, or, I was at an event throughout. So that's pretty cool. I think Queenstown was probably the one of the major defining points for me. This is the click point where I was like, this is my profession. This is what I'm passionate about, and this is what I want to push forward. And Queenstown was the point where I made this decision that I wanted to go overseas somewhere. I moved back up to Auckland, helped a friend of ours open Bedford Soda and Liquor, Jason Clark, who Laurie here also worked at Bedford Soda and Liquor at one point too. And I worked there just to help set up, and then I moved to Dubai. I thought it was going to be great. It wasn't necessarily the greatest, but it only kind of spurred the fire to get a little bit more knowledge and kind of understand the industry more. And I think that's pretty much actually where I made my decision to move to London. So in between that, I worked in a little place in Christchurch where I met some really cool people, some lifetime friends. Andrew Brown is a chef, and I kind of started to understand how that food and drink side was connected. And we moved to London. So I jumped in, turned up pretty much after 6 weeks of holiday in Japan, zero money, got to this crazy big city that was like next level nuts. And went in for an interview, which kindly a friend of all of ours, James Goggin, had managed to connect me with the bar manager at a place called Milk and Honey, which I was shitting my pants about, to be perfectly honest. Like 100%, I was scared shitless. So I went to this interview. We'll talk a little bit more about what happened in that interview a little later on. But anyway, I walked in. It was pretty daunting. I couldn't do the trial because I had bad communication. It wasn't actually my fault. But I couldn't do the trial. I had to catch a train back up to my family's house. And I didn't hear for 2 weeks, and then I got a call on the Monday saying, "Oh, you've got the job." And I was like, "Holy shit! This is next level. Like, this is where the potential of my life as bartender kind of starts." I worked there for 6 or so months. Learned a hell of a lot. Really, I think probably we'll cover a little bit more of this, but just straight thrown in the deep end. Like, you feel like you're starting from scratch again, and that was a really cool feeling and daunting at the same time. But I was only there for about 6 months. It didn't quite work out how I like it, and I lost a bit of excitement behind the creativity that was something that was always in my head back home in New Zealand, and it was very classic there. So I kind of lost a little bit of that. Fast forward a couple of months, and I actually met the guys, Ian Griffiths and Ryan from the Lion Group. They just kind of opened 4 or 5 months before Dandelion. And just kind of got chatting, just really connected with where their ethos was, where my personal ethos was. And it sounded like, although I knew nothing about this place, just so you know, I didn't even know that there was any accolades. All I knew was it was a hotel bar that a whole heap of guys from Milk and Honey had moved to at one point. I ended up taking the job there. Pretty crazy. Learned so much. It was awesome to kind of really question understanding ingredients and that kind of thing. And it opened up so many opportunities for me. I was there for just under 3 years. Ended up being the head bartender, which was really fucking cool. And just, driving from there, got lots of chance to travel overseas. And it just really spurred me to kind of come back afterwards to New Zealand and push as much of the great education that I was lucky enough to have overseas back here. So there's very much my own brand over here is very much focused on training, the building of drinks and the understanding behind drinks and thoughtfulness behind drinks.
One of the things that I feel like you should tell everyone about, because we've had some chats about, everything that everyone's been through, but Mikey, there's something really cool that happened at Dandelion while you were working there. So you're gonna let everyone know?
I mean, one of the crazy things was just a volume of awards. I would probably say would be probably the best term, but probably when I started, I walked into what was quite a crazy environment. I was warned that it was going to be quite negative, and it was a changing point. I think a lot of people know that new businesses, after 6 months, that initial crew often leaves, and this was that point. So I was walking into two remaining staff and about 6 or 7 going at the same time. So it was quite a crazy, scary, different environment. And also at the same time, Ian and Ryan and the team were flipping the whole format. So a definitive moment is the fact that I walked in and we came 50th in 50 best bars, which is obviously nothing to frown about. But
in the world.
In the world. And that was pretty crazy. And obviously I was around people who were like, "Oh, that sucks." But it was ridiculous. And then the following year, we'd spent so much time putting thought in, and we're very humble about it. We really didn't think that anything was going to come. In fact, we thought we'd be out of the 50. And we sat there at the awards, and slowly but surely it went down, and we ended up at number 3. And we genuinely couldn't really believe it. The accolades isn't something that I'm we're ever really passionate about, and I think that's probably the best thing that I ever learned from Dandelion was those things happen, but the reality was that it was because we all did what we were passionate about.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I guess I'll introduce myself. So hi, I'm Lori, and I guess to talk a little bit about where I started working hospitality or why I started working in bars and restaurants. I actually got a job when I was 14, and probably a lot of people don't know this, but when I moved to New Zealand, it was just me, my mom, and my brother. So my mom was like a single income trying to find a job. We had very little money in our family, and I don't know how my mom made it work, but essentially I couldn't really buy things. I couldn't go out and buy clothes or wear the cool stuff that the other kids were wearing. So I pretty much had to, my goal was to try and find a job as quickly as I could just to be able to earn pocket money and buy what I want to buy, basically. And I was talking in math class with a girl who I went to high school with, and she was like, cool, I've got a job. I'm working at Little India down the road. Like, I think they're looking for someone. So, maybe you should like go in and apply. So I did. And I wrote my tiny, not very, like, I guess not really substantial CV and took it into Little India, and they hired me. And I was about 14 years old at this time. So I was quite young. And it was kind of like a little bit of a taster into hospitality, because I was, starting to work evenings, and it was just a totally different experience for me, and it was quite fast paced. And at this point in my life, like, I didn't know what Merlot was. I didn't know if Pinot Gris was a white or red wine. Like, I knew nothing. And then the next job that I got that really probably started to influenced me and make me start to really care about hospitality was a job in Petone in Wellington called Gusto Bistro. It was like a Mediterranean place, and it was really quite upmarket for the area at the time. It was like probably the best restaurant in Petone. And here is where I started to be exposed to weekly wine trainings, and I started to work alongside, like, my manager was from Belgium, and he had all this experience with European wine. He started training us, and I think there was like one lunch that we went to. It was a sherry training. We had to try 7 to 8 different styles of sherry, and then it was all food matched, and I was kind of like, oh my god, this is so interesting, and it's there's so much to learn here, and I'm also getting paid to do this like crazy. So that kind of like switched on a light bulb where I'm like, I'm really interested in what we're serving here, and the wines and the beverages. So I started to ask a lot of questions and started to try and learn. And I was quite young at the time too. And then from there, I thought that like I kind of wanted to continue working alongside my study. I was still doing kind of like part-time hours, and I moved and applied for a fine dining restaurant in Wellington at the time, which was a kind of quite highly esteemed, and again got to work alongside another manager who was very passionate about wine, and I started just trying to ask questions and learn more. And this was about the time that I started to decide that I wanted to study it formally. From there, I got into like the bar world because I started developing an interest in the bartending scene. And I was like, okay, this is also kind of cool. So I, and that was from visiting places like Hawthorne and seeing Gian working. And, he was one of the people that like actually really inspired me because I was blown away by walking to this bar, watching, him and Peter pretty much host a whole room of people, have a conversation with everyone, but then make these incredible kind of creative drinks as well. So that for me was like, wow, this is really cool. So by chance, I got to meet Guy at a bar one night, and who's a bartender at the time. It was like, must have been a hospital party, I don't know. And I was just kind of chatting to him about how I want to learn about bartending and work behind the bar. So he mentioned that he was going to start opening up a bar pretty soon, and if I was interested in the job, I should kind of let him know and send him a message. So I did. And what ended up happening is on my days off from my fine dining job, I would go to his bar to learn and to learn how to bartend and start picking things up. And then, yeah, that kind of carried on. I continued on with hospitality, kind of worked across Wellington, Auckland, came back to Wellington and worked for Guy again. And this was probably another pivotal moment in my life because at this point I was studying, I was working hospitality, and then Guy encouraged me to enter competitions. And at the time of my life, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm quite young. I don't really have a lot of experience. I don't feel like I'm good enough to enter competitions. But he was like, no, you should at least, give it a go. And he helped me practice, and, like I'd always stay behind after work, and I just kind of, I guess, tell my stories and work on these drinks and things like that and submit them. And then ended up doing pretty well in a couple of comps and getting to like the national finals of Bacardi Legacy and things like that for New Zealand, which I was completely surprised about. I just never expected it in my life. But the amount, like, I realized there's a point in my life where I realized like, cool, I'm putting all this effort into bartending. I'm coming home and like having to work on these competitions. I'm staying late after work. I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm like really enjoying it because I was kind of buzzing off the fast pace and the creativity and like, the experience of giving a great, night of service to a customer and having connection with people. And I was just like, I found that like so, I don't know, fulfilling. And so there came a point where I was like, cool, I need to choose what my career is going to be, because I can't keep spreading myself super thinly. And so I kind of made the dive to follow hospitality as my career option, or my full-time career. And I think a lot of people were really nervous, or a lot of my, my family was kind of like, are you sure this is what you want to do? Like, it's, can you really do anything with this? And I was kind of like, no, I'm determined. I love this. I feel like I can make a really cool career out of this. And I know I can, because I started to meet people like Dickie and Frankie, and they really kind of opened my eyes to the cool job pathways that hospitality can take you to. You could become a brand ambassador, you could travel, you could educate people. So that really inspired me to kind of look further in hospitality as a career. And then moved up to Auckland. I most notably probably ran Bedford Soda and Liquor, which is my last hospo job, or my last bartending job. And I ended up running the bar there. And I really kind of loved working there, because that was the point in my hospitality career where I found balance in my life, and I started to, work a little bit more healthily maybe, and like have more time outdoors and managed to look after myself. And so that was a really cool spot. Really loved it. I had a great team. Like, a lot of the guys are still there. Really had heaps of fun working there. So it's like a very, fond place in my heart. And then I think it was like 3 years ago that I got a phone call from a friend who was working at Lion at the time, and he was like to me, hey, don't know if you know this, but Lion's like, looking for a wine ambassador. And I was kind of like, cool. I don't think I'd ever get that job, so I don't know why I'd apply. But then he was like, no, I think you should. And I was like, okay, cool. So I applied for it, went through like this really intense interview process, kind of, I think they must have liked me, so I got the job. And then for the last 3 years, I have been working at Lion as a wine ambassador with a really hectic team of lads. And now we've just got our first female boss in, which is really cool. And we basically spend our time training the hospitality industry, kind of circling up and down New Zealand, and just trying to elevate the level of the industry and get people to, basically see that, see what you can do with your career and help you be a little bit better at what you do. So that's kind of what makes me thrive. I love what where I'm working right now. And that's kind of me.
It's amazing.
Yeah, very nice.
One thing to note here probably is the fact that me, Gian, and Laurie probably all met in that first competition she was in. Whether me and G were in the crowd or not, I can't actually remember. I think we were both competing, but
yeah.
So she definitely beat us.
It was so scary. I remember walking in, I was like the only girl in the room. I was like, oh my God, I don't know anyone.
Yeah, I can only imagine it'd be pretty daunting, eh? Cool. So, I mean, I guess our first like actual topic to chat about, and it kind of seems pretty fitting at the moment. Obviously, one of the big reasons why this podcast actually ended up becoming what it is because of what's happened at the start of the year, this year, and what's potentially going to happen. So, basically, the state of the industry, I guess. So, I mean, what do we think about the current state of the industry, predominantly in New Zealand, but obviously globally too? And do we have any ideas of how we can, what we can do to move forward and thrive? G?
Sorry. Sorry. I mean, like Mikey said, this whole idea came about with the sort of challenges that we are being faced on a daily basis with COVID, and whether you are the bartender, the chef, or the manager, head chef, or the sort of like owner, it affects everyone at the end of the day. And it also affects the customers, the consumers, because we like to think that hospitality and the venues in it are sort of seen as a nice little safe haven for people to kind of escape from their daily lives, just to go and relax and kind of socialize and be surrounded by people that they enjoy. And so I think like the state of the industry is truly in a bit of shock. I think right now our industry is kind of seeing is building different ways of how we can learn from our mistakes of the past and move forward. whether it's building more of like a work-life balance, like what Laurie was talking about, where she worked at Bedford Soda, or whether it's sort of like the pay gap. I think that the state of the industry now, we've kind of come to a halt where we're having those really tough conversations, we're asking the really difficult questions, and we're all expecting answers. We all want to be heard, we all want to be seen, we all want to be involved, because at the end of the day, like, we are working 40, 50 hours a week. We'd like to know what's going to happen with us next week. And so I think the tough conversations are happening, and it's all for a positive outcome, because as much as we sometimes say like, oh, maybe I'll look at getting another job, there's still a big part of us that will literally go back and be like, well, actually, no, I had a great time tonight. I'm gonna carry on working in this industry. So I think the state of the industry is in a bit of a shock, but it's again, like, it's a team effort. It's not a one person that rides a restaurant service or runs the kitchen. It's a team effort. So as long as all of us come together, we're able to make the changes together and look forward.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with you. I think it's going to be a tough road, a tough year, a tough couple of years coming up for hospitality with everything that's gone on. I guess, like, one of the things that I'm really seeing is that, we're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices in the upcoming years and be, really, really true. I think I guess a lot of venues and people going into hospitality, or maybe people that are thinking about opening up a new place, need to be really kind of strict on with themselves right now, is to really define their purpose, like really be clear on it and don't waver from it. Because I think that in these situations, or in these tough times, that people make a lot of decisions that are very fear-based. And once you start making, fear-based decisions, you kind of can do things that will really hurt you, might benefit you slightly in the short term, but could really hurt you in the long term. So yeah, I think that venues should really be careful and, not do things that might, alienate staff short-term wise, I don't know, like to save a little bit of money, like cut down staff trainings and things like that, because that's the stuff that will hurt you long-term, and that will lose your staff loyalty. And I think that's really important to look after our people right now. And I know it's tough because it's such a razor-thin profit margin industry, but the things that are going to help us long-term are really kind of investing in our people. And also to be a little bit agile and think about things you could do within your venue to bring in your community. One of the venue operators that I really love working up here in Auckland, their philosophy was, they were speaking to me about their philosophy once, and they were just saying, like, our goal is to not just have a bar, but a place where the community comes together. So what can we do to bring people in to socialize, or, run classes, or, maybe like, they did like a Pilates and Pinot Noir class, or on Saturdays, and they just make excuses. They give the community reasons to get together that weren't solely just about the bar and the food. So yeah, that's kind of what I think. Yeah,
I mean, I'm on a pretty similar buzz to you there, Laurie, in the fact that I really think I really think the level of kind of coming back to it and sticking to your ethos is very much a huge focus that needs to be followed. It's you guys, what people know what they do as a business, and they know how their business is held together. If anything, COVID's probably been a really good time to rethink how people's businesses work. People have had to develop different elements, different arms of their businesses, which has made it even quite a lot harder. And I know, talking to different restaurant owners, and that's been quite disheartening, to have a takeaway offering. So I think probably just a lot of it's don't let it grind you down. Also, the flip side is, some bars and restaurants at the moment, at current time, are actually doing really well. It's the middle of winter in New Zealand, and often that's the quietest time. So some people are doing really well, but just future-proof. Like make sure that you're ready. I don't know if it might sound a little bit ruthless, but if you don't have an exit strategy, definitely have something kind of rolling and ready, and just stick to your guns. Like, you guys are passionate about people are passionate about what they do. Just really kind of put your head in and think about where you're putting those funds and where you're putting that focus.
Yeah, definitely. It's Yeah, you really like, as someone personally, I hope to one day own a venue. It's definitely made me consider a lot, taken a lot, and know that this could potentially happen again in the near future. So understanding and writing that into your future business plans is actually something that's going to be crucial for everyone now, because we're all in that time of our lives where the reality is it could happen again, and so we need to be prepared. Awesome. So just onto our next topic, personal challenges. As we all know, hospitality is a mentally and physically draining sort of environment. It's a job that can be quite harsh on the body, working many hours a day. You do it for the passion, passion of labor. But the next year it's really going to be a challenging time for the industry, not just service wise, but the longevity and seeing what the outcomes will be. And so what we want to kind of talk about was actually give the people who watch this series and listen to the podcast is an understanding of our challenges as well. So maybe we'll start with you, Laurie, if you want to talk about your personal challenges.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely important to have the conversation about, challenges we face, because a lot of individuals are going to be going through really intense challenges over the next couple of years, whether it be redundancy, businesses closing, things like that. So we're always going to face challenges in our life, and there's always a way through them. And kind of two of the big challenges I've had in my life, well, the first one has been exhaustion. It took me a long time in hospitality to work out how to manage my energy levels and well-being, because I think there's, a little bit of, there's the things that you do that you think, make you happy and give you energy. And there's the things that you do that really actually give you happiness and energy. And it took me a long time to figure out that, while I love having a night out and I love having a big night out, if I do them all the time, it actually leaves me a lot more unhappy overall in the long term, versus if I do things that give me energy and kind of fulfill me a little bit more. Like, really simply, one of the easiest ways for me to manage exhaustion is to sleep more. Sounds obvious. And to just spend outside, like time outside. That is for me one of the ways that I find most of my happiness. So you'll probably see a lot of the stuff I put on social media is just stuff, places that I love and places that make me feel kind of calm, and that's normally outside. And the other thing that, is something that probably should be spoken to as well is the challenge as a female bartender. This is something that, there's been things that I've kind of seen, or things that have been said to me that I think a lot of maybe my male colleagues would have never had to go through. So it's definitely something to chat about for the women of the industry, because really there's some things that have been said that for example, one of the things that used to really annoy me working in the bar is when a customer would come in and kind of just, I'd be there serving him or her, and they would just kind of pass me over and ask to talk to my male colleague, for example, and ask his advice on the whiskeys or the wines or whatever it might be, or the cocktails. And I'd kind of be like, I wrote that list. I'm training these guys. So, and it just seems to really grind me as a perception of, that you won't know as much because you're the girl behind the bar. So that's something that I find really frustrating. But the other thing to maybe speak to is that as a female behind the bar, there's a lot of pressure to be one of the boys and to fit in the boys club. And that means drinking like the boys, keeping up with the boys, to earn and that's how I felt like I had to earn respect for a while. But really it's taken me until probably now in my life to kind of be comfortable with the fact that I can say no and I don't have to do that to be respected. And so I'm really trying to spend more time now in my life being true to myself. And don't get me wrong, I still love going out with the guys and still having a good time, but then also to take the time to recognize when I'm no, I actually would rather be at home, or, read a book or do something else that's, might not be cool, but will for me benefit me more in the long run. You kind of have to develop a pretty thick skin. I think working as a female in the industry, you have to hear a lot of things. There's a lot of degrading comments. People might kind of grab you in places you don't really want to be grabbed. So you kind of have to deal with a lot, and it's not right. It's not stuff that, at this day and age should still be happening, but it does. So really, I guess one of the kind of ways I've gotten through those challenges is to first of all, recognize that when people say things to you, to kind of recognize that it's a reflection of them, not of you. So if someone's being degrading or whatever it might be, or saying things to you, like, they're gonna stay where they are in their lives, and if you just kind of keep doing what you're doing, you will move forward and get to a better place. And I think that's really important to kind of separate the fact, that people can say really horrible things, but that's a reflection of them. And luckily for me, I've worked with some really great people in hospitality, and when these situations have come up, people have said kind of derogatory comments that are really uncalled for. I've had both guys and girls who I've worked with either back me up or help ask people to leave. And I think that maybe that's something that managers should definitely be aware of as well going forward, is more awareness of how do we make our coworkers feel safe, no matter who they are or what they look like, or yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I guess for me, that some of the major challenges are resilience. There's obviously a kind of bullying aspect, but yeah, just kind of keeping at it. I guess we're part of an industry like Laurie touched on, that we work what would be classed as relatively antisocial hours, and the volume of hours, it's almost expected as a norm to do 15, 16 hours, and I don't think there's not many other industries where you're expected to do that and function. So I guess standing strong and pushing yourself to make sure that you look after yourself in that regard, being resilient and strong. And that's a really, really hard thing to keep yourself going, especially if every single night the rest of the team that you work with wants to go out for a staffy, or there's drinking throughout, and there's other people who aren't necessarily fussed about it. And I suppose that kind of defines a bit more of the drive in there as well. The other side, obviously, for me, one of the huge challenges, and I'm probably lucky enough or unlucky enough, because I feel like it's probably an experience thing too, is the level of bullying that is often behind the bar. As Laurie kind of already mentioned, the female bartender thing is pretty hardcore, and it's something I've always been pretty against. But also the level that you can see, which is known as a norm, specifically still these days in kitchens, and it's that whole beating down that you're expected to do this. And I think that comes along with the hours as well. You're expected that this is the norm, and you feel like you have to fit into that category. Whereas I feel like we're often more creative, we're more functional, and we're more driven if we actually do things healthy.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, I think what it was expected of the norm of hospitality, where you're made to feel like a little person when you work as a barback or as a kitchen porter, is going to be one of those tough questions and conversations that need to be had and need to be moved away from, because at the end of the day, every person that works in hospitality is a valued member of that team. If that person wasn't there, the whole team would struggle. And this is why we have a number of staff. This is why we have a schedule of when people are where they're meant to be at what times. And so I think, like the resilience aspect of hospitality is, it is a tough one, but it's just finding the balance. Like you said, you can't burn the candle at both ends. And I think that was, I'll be first to admit that I was definitely one of those people. I've done it for years and I have learned from it. I'm not saying that I'm not going to do it again.
I think we all still do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's just about finding balance. If anything, like, I'm kind of worried about going back to work now, because I got so used to going to bed at 10 o'clock at night. But I'm also even more excited about being to go back at work and working in bars and restaurants where you have people who may have just flown into the city and have only had a chance to get to the bar at like 11:30 at night, and be able to be there for them and give them the experience. And I think that's one of the things that I loved about Hawthorn, was just the fact that we are open to 3 a.m. every single night for that exact mentality. Where we had so many international people would come in at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and they just want to have a chat, and and we were there for them. And it's what I love about the industry, being able to communicate with people.
Yeah, awesome. I might just kind of like add a little thing in. We chatted a little bit about building resilience as well. So like obviously all three of us have had our own kind of unique challenges through through hospitality. I think it's a good thing to have conversations about them, but also like, do you guys have any tips around building resilience or things that you do?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's just surrounding yourself by the same like-minded people. You know, I'm not saying that hanging out with people that like to party, you know, isn't a bad thing. You know, they're still your mates at the end of the day. But if you want to get up and go for a hike the next day, you know, it comes down to yourself to be able to get up as well. But B, you know, you could be that person that helps motivate people. And it all, at the end of the day, it all starts from the top, right? You know, if you, as sort of someone that wants to be the leader or help kind of bring people together, just kind of be that first voice, first contact.
Yeah, I think resilience is definitely built on that understanding of everything. I think too much of one thing can lead to it falling away on the other side. So it's definitely an organization thing to a certain degree in your mentality, but it's also like a little bit of everything is always going to kind of be a bit better than doing way too much of one thing.
Yeah, I think the two biggest things that I find have built my own resilience over the last couple of years. The first has been exercise. So I feel like resilience is built to build resilience, you have to do hard things. Like the more hard stuff you do, like the stronger you become and the more your comfort level can grow. So one of the things I'd say to you, if you want to build your resilience, challenge yourself, like do things that, you know, are uncomfortable. And for me, like exercise is that way to do that. You know, you push yourself to like a level of being uncomfortable, and that overall in my life helps me become more physically and mentally resilient. But the second thing that I think a lot of people don't really know or talk about is sleep. Like, you know, the last 2 hours of your sleep are, and I've started to learn a lot about this, like with the Healthy Hospo stuff, but I feel like everyone should know this. The last 2 hours where you're, you know, sleeping in your 8-hour sleep cycle is where you do your dream sleep, and that's where you emotionally repair. So if you're sleeping, you know, only 6 hours a night, or you're drinking a lot of alcohol before bed, you never get the chance to emotionally repair your mind during your sleep. So immediately you put your mental health on a back foot. So one thing that, you know, if you're feeling like, you know, there's a lot of emotional strain happening in your life, and, you know, we do deal with a lot of emotional strain going through I guess the tough shifts, and, you know, dealing with a lot of pressure from all sides. Yeah, I think that's something to be really mindful for. So if you're wanting to be resilient, you know, make sure you're prioritizing your sleep as well, because that will help you in more ways than you know. And it's the number one thing you can do for your mental fitness, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Like, by no means are we saying don't go out and party. Like, yeah. we all love to have a beer. We all love to have a staff meeting or a shot. But it's just, yeah, think about what you're going to do the next day. Think about what you're going to do later. Think about supporting each other as well. Yeah, it's yeah, I love having beers. So
yeah, we're definitely not perfect, but it's also like pick and choose your nights, because I know like we all love a big blowout every now and then, you know.
And it's definitely true. The sleep aspect is such an important thing to do with hospitality, and like I obviously the balance can be a little bit tough when you work later nights. But it is something that should be definitely considered. It was one of those ones that, again, like I said, you know, burning the candle at both ends. I thought I could go to bed at 6 o'clock in the morning and then wake up for my 9 o'clock shift. It's just, sometimes it's just unachievable because your mind is not actually there. You've not had a chance to rest your body and your mind to be able to restart.
Yeah. You could have a baby. Babies are quite good to...
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know, Mikey's a new dad. So sleep doesn't exist.
That's yeah. I don't know if it's a foolproof idea, but it genuinely changes your whole life perspective on where you have to put the focus, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I admire you for that.
I don't.
Cool.
All right, well, I guess we should kind of chat about the next topic. So we thought something cool to discuss would be a little bit about how hospitality is seen internationally, how it's different to here in New Zealand, and how people see New Zealand bartenders internationally as well. So particularly Mikey and Gian have worked overseas, so they'll probably have some cool stuff to say about this. And yeah, I guess what you love about the industry as well.
Yeah. For me, I guess probably going overseas was when I first kind of understood that it was all quite serious. I think we touched on it before, but one of the first things when I got into London was in that Milk and Honey first meeting or interview, I actually got sat down to do like a 60-question exam, which is probably one of the hardest bar exams I've ever done in my life. And at that point, I was like, this is pretty serious. Like, this is the kind of thing that you'd expect to go into in a big time role in any other business. Well, you might not even do that, So that was kind of one of the turning points of understanding for me how serious it is over there. But to answer the question on how Kiwis are seen specifically, I think we're seen as quite hardworking. I think we've got that like know-how, can do. I know it sounds real cheesy, but they're like number 8 wire kind of method of madness and that thought process that we just get things done. And we're relatively determined. I think also the fact that we've come from the other side of the world, specifically in London or wherever else, it means that you've actually put the thought in to get there. It hasn't maybe just fallen into your hands, or it has been a lot harder to get there, I guess. But usually pretty chirpy, right? That's the main thing. Also, I think one of the things for me that we always forget is our accents are absolutely ridiculous, and we're basically tropical people. So like there's almost this intrigue of where the hell we come from and what our accents are and why we hate being called Australian, I guess.
I mean, I've never experienced that myself, but
yeah, no, I think Mikey nailed it. Like I've been quite fortunate now, especially when I was working at Happiness Forgets. I was very lucky to travel quite a lot. Got to travel so many different parts of the world, and just seeing how people find sort of like Asia Pacific industry workers is quite incredible, really. And it's a really humbling experience, to be honest, because it really makes you realize that 12 plus hour day that you didn't go unnoticed. It's all the hard work that you did, the Kiwi ingenuity, the sort of the problem solving aspect of who we are as a whole community, as New Zealanders. It doesn't go unnoticed. And I think overseas we're pretty highly regarded, which is really nice. It's really nice to hear that a country of 5 million people, I think, something like that, is highly regarded around the world and really sought after, to be honest. We do pride ourselves on our hard work, and we know that we like to show up when the time is due. And yeah, like the hospitality industry as a whole around the world is seen as a career. And so if people overseas can see it as a career, can see us as New Zealanders being a big part of that career, why can't we instill that into other mentalities in New Zealand? And so essentially this is what we want to do, is we want to be able to show you that there is a lot more to just pouring a pint and to cutting 50 kilos of potatoes. There's more. This industry, this world expands into so much more, and it just comes down to yourself and also the people that you meet to help guide you through that way.
Yeah, totally. I think one of the cool things about Kiwi bartenders or people who work in hospitality that start in New Zealand is that, it's not a career that's done for money here. It is very much a career that is, you pursue if you're passionate about it. And that means that, there's a lot of hard work and love that goes into it. And you can see that because a lot of maybe a lot of people in hospitality here in New Zealand don't know this, but if you look overseas, a lot of the people who have taken global brand ambassador roles or global marketing roles or working in trade advocacy or, wherever it might be, actually come from New Zealand. Like there's so many people all across the world that are Kiwis, and I think it's so cool to see, it's a lot of them like are our friends as well that we've, seen and gone to like nail these amazing dream jobs that, the average person probably doesn't even know exist. So if you are working in hospitality in New Zealand, take comfort in knowing that you are in a very well-respected country, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think when we kind of sat down to chat about all of this, we thought about people who we could reach out to, and the list was ridiculous of Kiwis, specifically in different cities, different countries. and even in our current cities is just ridiculous. Like the amount of people doing different roles in different sectors of hospitality it's pretty awesome. It's quite pretty inspiring, right?
Yeah, I think I mean, I don't want to speak for you guys, but I think that's what makes us love hospitality the most, is the connection, and B, the amount of people that grow on to be lifelong friends, but also inspiring. Like, I think that's one of the big things that we will hopefully be able to provide people with this segment, is that every chance you listen, it just becomes sort of a piece of inspiration. And I think, well, I know for myself that from the people who we have ready to be interviewed, or just have a chat as mates, I'm super excited about getting inspired by each one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love
That's
it.
perfect timing, Laurie and G, to kind of talk about what we love the most in the industry.
Yeah, I guess I would just say, like, for me, like, if you like, for anyone who kind of doubts hospitality as a career, I would suggest, and I know this is kind of hard right now in the current climate, but go to New York City, sit at a bar there, and just watch the skill, that happens behind the bar. And that's just not something that, that for me, like, takes a lifetime to build those kind of career and knowledge and the skills and things like that. But one of the things I love most about hospitality is, I guess, the community side of it, which we've kind of spoken a little bit. You build this incredible family, people who are very hospitable will take care of you. You can pretty much travel anywhere in the world and people will look after you. And I really love that kind of, that feeling of camaraderie that you have working behind a shift, being absolutely slammed, but nailing it within your family, or within your team. And then on top of that, like, the never ending ability to learn. So that's kind of what I love a lot about, the role that I'm in right now, is that I could spend the rest of my life reading, trying to learn about wine, and I would never know everything. There's so much to learn, but then having that ability to pass that knowledge on as well, and to spark some light bulbs for people, that's pretty cool.
Choice.
Yeah, definitely. Like, the ability to learn is endless in this industry, and I think it's just that sort of idea of, like, I've already learnt X amount of classic cocktails. It's like, cool, well, why not learn about this type of wine, or why not learn about this type of technique, or something like that. And it doesn't end there. It doesn't end with just learning about the on-shift sort of stuff. You get to learn about people. You get to learn about how to react, or how to deal with different types of personalities. You get to learn how to make yourself a better person. Like, I'm not perfect by any means, but I've been fortunate to be surrounded by so many different personalities that I've learned how to compose myself, and I'm still learning. Like, every day I try and challenge myself in a different way. And if it wasn't for hospitality, I would probably still be that really shy guy that just sits in the back and doesn't really talk much to people. I still consider myself a very shy person. Being on camera is very terrifying right now, but I do it because I love this industry, and I want to be able to pass on my passion with everyone.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I have to completely and utterly agree with pretty much everything that you guys have covered. The family thing has always been the top reason for me, and I think probably the reason why, right at the start, it was the reason why I even cut my study, because there was just this awesome clique of completely different people that you probably never ever run into in your team, first of all, but second of all, dealing with different people day by day as guests. People that you probably never in your wildest dreams actually think that you'll meet, or have to have a full conversation with. So that's, I think inspiring people in that sense to a certain degree. Again, I think I'm relatively shy on that regard, and I don't think for sure that it's something to aspire to constantly, but sometimes when you've made somebody's day over the bar, it's one of the coolest feelings if you can give somebody a great drink, or there's something that you've learned about, something ridiculous that that connects you with them. It's like it's just that next little level that you would never get otherwise. It's definitely that level. And then also the education side. So like G just covered, I mean, we were actually just talking before this about the books that we were all we've all been looking at the moment, and we're pretty much all kind of aligned and got really fizzy and excited about things that we're getting really excited about. Hey, we might not even make it to reading those books, but the idea is that you're constantly stemmed into all of these different things that people have told you about, that the possibilities are endless. Everybody in our industry does something completely different in a completely different way. There's 160 different ways to 500 different ways to make each drink. And then variables on that. So it's nuts.
That's so funny. Watch out for episode, 3 on the olfactory receptors. But what I would really quickly want to add to that, because you just kind of like triggered this thought or this idea, was that maybe something that we don't speak about enough in hospitality is that, it really does build skills that will help your career no matter what it is for the rest of your life. Like that ability to relate to people of all backgrounds, all genders. Like you really have to learn how to read people, help them feel comfortable, anticipate their needs before they know it. And then the social skills as well. And then managing stress will help you in whatever career you have for the rest of your life. So I think that's something that probably should be spoken about more, and skills that you will never learn in the classroom. So even if you're studying to be, maybe a doctor or lawyer, whatever it might be, whatever you learn in hospitality will really benefit your kind of, your emotional intelligence or your relationship skills, your relationship building skills for the rest of your life. Yeah,
definitely. And it's one of those industries that puts you out of your comfort zone, like music. It breaks the social barriers. It connects you in so many different ways, whether it's a conversation or whether it's literally just sitting right next to each other and having a awareness that you both like a certain topic. I think that's one of the best things about hospitality, is that it can bring people together, whether it's your the different races or whether different genders or backgrounds. We all are in this together as a community, as a family. And I think that's one of the important things to remember about hospitality. And that's what it's genuinely what I love. Yeah.
Okay, so the next topic that I'll really briefly cover is, we wanted to have a quick chat about the future of hospo, because this is a question we're going to start asking some of the people that we bring in for our interviews or our kind of next guests. So a question for the two of you would be, what direction do you guys see our industry going in? And is there anything that you'd like to see change, or kind of, a direction you'd like to see the industry move in coming towards the future?
Yeah, I think under, as much as it's seen as a trend, I think it should be a staple now. It's sustainability, but it's not just a sustainability of products, it's a sustainability of the industry. So having the longevity, having the understanding that people need to have, the time for themselves. I think that's something that I'd like to see in, as a change. And I think now that COVID is happening and is ongoing, it's given employers, managers, and employees a chance to really reflect on that and hopefully help each other to kind of progress in the industry.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'd kind of like to pull some potential positives from the whole COVID thing, and from that, I think it's only given hospitality owners and business owners an inspiration from a multitude of angles. There's so much more to understand about your business now. You can look at restructuring in a certain way, and like G talked about, the sustainability elements, maybe things that you have as part of your business that you maybe don't need there anymore, or you've developed in a completely different way. And you hope to see something that's maybe there's some more refinement in how people operate in the hospitality industry.
Yeah, totally agree with you guys. I think like you kind of both have said, this is a great time. COVID has been a really great time to kind of stop, pause, have a little bit of reflect, and think about what we want to bring forward into the industry. And for me, one of the things I'd love to see change is that culture of being a martyr. So I think it's for so long we've had this culture in hospitality where, you kind of brag about working 80, 90 hours, or if you're working 50 hours, that's part-time. And I just think in my head, I'm like, wow, how did we get to this point where we are bragging about destroying our bodies and our minds? And that's not really sustainable or the best way to get, the best out of our people. And there's so many companies around the world that have caught on to that, like, the Googles, these really successful companies who have realized that for years that if you look after your staff and you give them the chance to, rest, they'll be more creative, they'll, be more efficient, you'll have a better longer term strategy, down the line. So really, I hope that more managers and owners start to ask some hard questions. How can we make our business more sustainable for the people working in it? Just like you said, G, and really get the best out of our people, especially if there's all these skill shortages going on. People are finding it hard to find staff. It's like, how are we going to bring talented people into the industry if we're really driving them to the ground when they get here? So that's what I'd love to see.
Definitely, I think, and one of the big conversations right now that's happening, in particular in the UK, is pay, and I think that's going to be one of the big turning points for hospitality as well, and in New Zealand in particular, where you don't get, like Laurie said, you don't get paid the wage that you should be getting paid for the hard work that you put in. And so it is going to be the tough conversations, but there's got to be an element of compromising between the employers, employees, and we kind of put ourselves in a very unfortunate scenario where we don't really have like a body that looks after the service workers. We have unions that look after the sort of like employers and the business structure, but there isn't sort of like a voice for the service workers. And hopefully we can come together and form something.
And support each other for sure.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, I will close out the chat from there. So we've kind of had an hour to chat about a few topics and, have some conversations about what we think matters in the industry right now, to introduce ourselves, say hi, and pretty much kick off episode 1 of Shift Notes. So it's been really awesome. Thank you guys for kind of giving up your time. We've been working on this for so long now, so it's cool to have it finally kind of recorded. No one will know like the amount of Zoom calls that we've had to just try and pull these ideas together. But next time, if anything resonated with you, if you want to reach out to any of us, you can find us on Instagram, send us a message. We're all pretty friendly. We're happy to answer back. But our next episode is going to be kind of exciting. We are going to get Charles Gillett on for an interview because we believe he is pretty much the definition of hospitality here in New Zealand. So we're super excited to be inspired by him and have some chats, and he's just a great guy in general. So
he is amazing. Charlie Bus.
All right, nice work, team. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, team.
Bye, guys.